Good evening, dear audience. This is FM 95.5 Radio Concepto from Buenos Aires presenting And a Time to Smile, my radio program that is broadcast every Saturday from 8:30 to 9 p.m. in Buenos Aires, 7:30 to 8 p.m. in Boston, and uploaded in my YouTube channel Humor de Osvaldo. The English program's title is either Speechless or Speechful, while the Spanish title is Between Course and Discourse, Entre el Curso y el Discurso. Both programs try to tell the same tale, but as you well know, impossible is nothing in the world of sports, or rather in the world of sports marketing. But in the world of grammar, none of the two impossible is nothing, or its inverted version of the popular slogan, nothing is impossible, is valid. On the other hand, I worked for some years as a mining engineer in a gold and silver, copper and zinc mine located in the Argentinian Patagonia, and there I learned that it is quite different to search for possible or probable or proven reserves. What I mean to say is that my program in English will neither be identical, nor equal, nor same, nor similar to my Spanish version. So many nors in any sentence seem to announce my Nordic intentions. But let's continue. My name is Osvaldo Peusner, and I will be the conductor for the next 30 minutes. Ariel Miguez is in charge of all technical matters within Radio Concepto's studio. This program deals with philosophy, literature, humor, and real life. But let me remain just a few more seconds with the title. When you hear the word Nordic, you think about Norway, you think about Sweden, about Oslo, Stockholm, or you think about delivering a Nobel Prize banquet speech. You want to deliver a Nobel speech, but you do not want to miss the banquet? To start with, in recent years, your banquet's menu will be Scandinavian. Don't worry, friends. Many of the 1,300 guests that you will listen to your speech at Stockholm City Hall will stop for a more conventional bite at a nearby cafeteria. You recognize the gentlemen by their white ties and tails, and ladies by their evening gowns. If you do not care so much about the meal and prepare to concentrate on your noble banquet speech, remember that you want it to be a memorable speech. But you feel that you are not a great speaker. You have to speak anyhow, although you prefer the sound of silence rather than the silence of sound. You're not Fidel Castro to talk for hours, but you're not a silent Buddha either, and you're not modest at all and want to shine like a superstar. Difficult? Yes, very difficult, but possible. Please, don't go into pages that tell you how to write a speech. They are wrong from beginning to end. They lead you into thinking that speaking and writing are the same thing. No, they are not. Let's start by analyzing some famous speech. It'll be healthy even if you're not successful as a speaker. Which speeches? There are many speeches to help you. I could suggest the following ones, but it'll be better when you make your own choice. We'll start with Hemingway's banquet speech. Hemingway was sick at the time of the Nobel Prize banquet, so he wrote the 334-word speech that was read by the American ambassador in Sweden in 1954, and later he recorded the version that we may listen to in YouTube. Please don't miss it. 2. Lincoln delivered his 272-word Gettysburg Address in 1863. Pericles delivered his 2,811-word funeral oration in the year 430 before the Common Era. 4. Martin Luther King delivered his 1,409-word I Have a Dream speech in 1963. 5. Churchill delivered his 514-word peroration within his "We'll Fight on the Beaches" speech in 1940. 6. Princess Diana's brother delivered his 1,217-word eulogy in 1997. 7. Napoleon delivered his 100-word farewell to the Old Guard in 1814. 8. Mark Antony delivered his 268th farewell to Caesar in the year 44 before the Common Era, and it was written by Shakespeare in 1599. 9. Che Guevara wrote a 1,615-word farewell letter to Castro, which Castro read and recorded and distributed since 1965 on. Of course, your politicians speak much longer than these fellows, but your politicians and mine are not eternal like the people who deliver these amazing masterworks. Nobel Peace speeches may take half an hour time. Scientific and literature Nobel speeches may be much shorter, like 10-minute presentations. Let's start by someone who feels he should not talk. I'm referring to speech number 1, Hemingway's banquet speech in 1954. His most outstanding words were the following: "I have no facility for speech-making and no command of oratory nor any domination of rhetoric. I wish to thank the administration of the University of Alfred Nobel for this prize. I accept it with humility. Writing is a lonely life. Organizations for writers palliate loneliness, but his work deteriorates. Writing means to try again and again for something that has never been done. I have spoken too long for a writer. A writer should write what he has to say and not speak it. Again, thank you." Although Hemingway is quite clear, we'll add a few words that hopefully will clarify his speech a bit more. He's telling us that he must be a writer and not a speaker, that he learned from Edgar Allan Poe and others that every word in a story must be absolutely necessary, indispensable to his plots. Anything else he does would be improper. He would probably say junk. The shortness of his speech is also a message concerning his profession and his life. It's simply a matter of understanding. We find a more important example in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address from 1863. At the time, Lincoln stood in a great battlefield of a great civil war where he wished to honor thousands of great men who died or risked their lives so that a great nation would exist. And he knew that he could not consecrate the ground of the battlefield because it was already consecrated by all the brave men, living and dead, who had fought there. Thus he said, "The world will little know nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here for a new birth of freedom in our nation and of the government of the people, by the people, and for the people." Poor Lincoln! How wrong he was! His words are remembered over and over again, like a prayer or like a mantra, but few remember the battle even though it involved almost 200,000 soldiers among two armies that suffered almost 50,000 casualties among killed, wounded, and missing. Of course, such marvelous speech would have no particular meaning without the battle behind, or without Lincoln's own example, his own life, and his own assassination. Wikipedia mentions that a funeral train carried his coffin from Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Illinois, stopping at many cities for memorials attended by hundreds of thousands. Many others gathered along the tracks to salute the train, to sing hymns, or to mourn in silence. Poet Walt Whitman composed 4 poems to honor Lincoln, but African Americans were especially moved. They had lost their Moses. the one who told their masters, "Let my people go." Curiously enough, both Hemingway's Nobel Prize speech and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address impact would have surprised their own authors. Hemingway thought he didn't have to speak publicly, for he was a writer and his words had to be read in books rather than to be heard in his or anybody else's voice. But we still love to hear him reading his Nobel speech. On the other hand, Lincoln delivered his speech thinking that his words were insignificant compared to the deeds of all the brave soldiers that struggled at Gettysburg. Hemingway did not understand that he was a great speaker, just as Lincoln didn't understand that he was a great soldier. 100 years later, another memorable speech was born with Lincoln's speech as its catalyzer or starter. Of course, it was Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream." But Martin Luther King's speech was designed to go down in history, for he knew that 250,000 people would be listening to his words. And this crowd gathered near Lincoln's memorial singing "We Shall Overcome," and Dr. King started his speech by remembering Lincoln's first words in Gettysburg's address, as if he were delivering an informative speech that soon became a poetic speech and ended up turning into a motivational speech. Let's remember some of the speech treasures. 100 years after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, colored people are not yet free. Discriminated and segregated, they live on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of material prosperity. But the architects of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence promised that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We come to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. With this faith we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to climb up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Then we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last." The speech had to motivate a crowd, and it had to have its memorable poetic passages. But first, it had to be heard properly. The organizers provided an expensive sound system, but it was sabotaged the day before. They told Attorney General Robert Kennedy about the situation, and the system was successfully rebuilt overnight by the U.S. Army Signal Corps. The speech had sufficient pauses that allowed the crowd to think, share, and applaud. 16 pauses to applaud, 2 more to cheer. It had its poetic repetitions. I have a dream, now is the time, we can never be satisfied, and let freedom ring. Each one was very much enjoyed at the moment and very much repeated thereafter. I love his paradoxical, "We will be able to go to jail together." "No, Dr. King, please. You don't want to go to jail." "Yes," he would reply. "We must be equal in both, the good and the bad." If the Gettysburg Address was delivered to very few people located close to the speaker, and Lincoln himself was convinced that his words were of very small value compared to the deeds of the soldiers, Martin Luther King's speech went to Washington to complete Lincoln's speech. Yes, A.B., their deeds were important, but your words became our dreams, and our dreams let freedom bells ring again in the country. In other words, we remember the deeds of the brave men in Gettysburg, we remember the words you spoke, we remember the thoughts behind your words, we made your thoughts into our dreams, And our dream is your own dream, freedom for all. But you think it's too much for your own speech in Scandinavia, right? Never say I can. And remember that everybody borrows from somebody else. Martin Luther King borrowed from Lincoln, and Lincoln borrowed from Pericles' funeral oration during the Peloponnesian Wars. Oh no, that's too far back. Don't you remember Pericles, the famous Athenian politician? Well, don't go that far, but don't stay too close to your times. Words are repeated and enriched time after time. You could remember one of Churchill's famous speeches. We shall fight on the beaches, blood, toil, tears, and sweat, and this was their finest hour. I suggest the three. Are you surprised because you know blood, toil, tears, and sweat as blood, tears, and sweat? Yes, we all miss the word toil. Perhaps because we think that toil is a biblical punishment that we do not deserve. I prefer good old Winston fighting in the beaches, telling us, there has never been a period in all these long centuries with an absolute guarantee against invasion. There was always the chance, and it is that chance which has excited the imaginations of many continental tyrants. Remember that the same continental winds that blow now were present in the days of Napoleon. But if the best arrangements are made, as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our island home. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. This looks much simpler than Lincoln's, Martin Luther King's, or Hemingway's words. But it is not. Churchill was a soldier, a writer, and a politician. But he was also a historian, and it is the historian who reminds us that we always live in the midst of history, and that at that particular time of war, they were historical beings located in history, and that what was happening then had happened before and will happen again. They had succeeded in the past by doing the proper things, and they were doing the proper things then, and the proper thing was to defend their island home. I believe that the use of the pronoun we by British kings, meaning the nation, had a powerful effect upon turning individuals into collective forces, and Churchill had the precise words to enlist all voices behind his own. 44 years later, heavy metal group Iron Maiden begins Aces High, a song written from the viewpoint of a Royal Air Force pilot, to remind us that Churchill's speech, "We fight on the beaches," is alive and very much alive. Jump in the cockpit and start up the engines. Remove all the wheel blocks. There's no time to waste. Gathering speed as we head down the runway. Got to get airborne before it's too late. And the chorus. Run. Live to fly. Fly to live. Do or die. Won't you? Run. Live to fly. Fly to live. Aces high. We need Hemingway, Lincoln, Martin Luther King, and Churchill telling us that we ourselves must be tempered like good steel in order to achieve proper hardness and elasticity to overcome our national and personal crises. Of course, Iron Maiden's heavy metal music helps us understand that temper and temple are our next door neighbors. And that is all for today. Thank you very much for listening, and a time to smile. Bye-bye.